الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Today is the night of Ramadan 1445. We continue the Sira of the Prophet ﷺ. We left it yesterday in the rebuilding of Al-Kaaba. As we said, the Kaaba, when it was built by Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam, it was built using white stones, and it was actually rectangular in shape. It was not square like we see today. And when Quraysh wanted to rebuild it, they knew that it was a sacred house, so they did not want to use any illicit money in rebuilding the Kaaba. So they knew that whatever money was haram, they would not use it to rebuild the Kaaba, like money generated from usury, which is what's called interest, money generated from the sale of alcohol, the money generated from illegal sexual acts. These kind of money that was generated, it was not used for Kaaba. So what happened is that Quraysh ran out of money. They had no more money to finish the Kaaba, so what they did, they decided to put the Kaaba in a square shape, and then to leave the stones that basically were going to be used to make it rectangular, leave it there until the time that they have halal money, and they're going to finish rebuilding the Kaaba. And that's what we said, that's the Hijr that we see today. Hijr, those are the stones that were supposed to be used to complete the construction of the Kaaba in a rectangular shape. We also said that originally the Kaaba, before the Quraysh rebuilt it, had two doors at the ground level. The door was not raised 2 meters the way we see it today. At the time it was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam, it had two doors. The person would enter from one door and exit from the other door. But Quraysh lifted the door so that only the people that they wanted to be able to enter Kaaba, they would allow them to do that. In other words, entering the Kaaba was no longer for everyone, it became only for the higher ups, kind of like what it is today, right? Although once a year when they wash the Kaaba, some people, they can get authorization to actually go inside the Kaaba today, right? When they wash it, usually once a year. So Quraysh were the ones to lift the door of the Kaaba by 2 meters. Otherwise, it was at the ground level and there were two doors. That means the way that Ibrahim and Ismail alayhi salam built it. And so the Quraysh ran out of legitimate money that they collected, so they eliminated an area covering 6 arms length. We said an arm's length is about 70 centimeters. Okay, so when you hear 6 arms, you multiply it by 70 centimeters, it comes out to 4.2 meters. So the Quraysh eliminated about 4.2 meters on the northern side of Al-Kaaba, which is called Al-Hijr or Al-Hatim. So Al-Hijr Ismail, that's the northern side of the Kaaba. The Yemeni corner, that's the side of Yemen, that's south. Okay, so the black stone is east, and then this portion where the Hijr is the northern portion. So they raised also the door from the level ground to let in only the people whom they desired. In other words, only the higher-ups would be able to enter Kaaba. When the structure was 15 arms length high, about 10 meters high, they erected the roof, which rested on 6 columns. Okay, so before, as we said, before they rebuilt it, the Kaaba had no roof. Okay, that's what we saw in the beginning. When they rebuilt it, they put a roof to it. Now, when the building of Al-Kaaba was finished, it assumed a square form, about 15 meters high, as we said. The side with the black stone and the one opposite to it were 10 meters long each. The black stone was 1.5 meters from the tawaf level. So if you go there, basically if you are 1.60 meters, the black stone is somewhere here. So the black stone is about 1.5 meters from the level of the tawaf. The two other sides were 12 meters long each. So it's not really a mathematical square, right? It's 10 meters on two sides and 12 meters on other sides. So it's kind of like a rectangle, but not as rectangular as it was originally. It was much longer because, as we said, you need to add 6 meters. Like the original size would be 16 meters by 12 meters, as opposed to 12 by 10. Okay, so they reduced the length by 6 meters on the northern side. And the door was 2 meters high from the ground level. A building structure of 0.25 meter high and 0.3 meter wide on the average surrounded Al-Kaaba. This is called Ash-Shadir 1. If you look at the Kaaba today, it's a white portion between it comes from the ground level and it's slanted like this and it goes all around the Kaaba. That's called Ash-Shadir 1. Go back to the Kaaba, you see it now, then you're going to know what I'm talking about. Because usually you don't realize that unless you know that it's there. It's called the Shadir 1. It's the white portion. It's made from marble today, and its swine is going all around the Kaaba. Originally, it was an integral part of the sanctuary, but the Quraysh left it out. So Muhammad ﷺ, before prophethood, he did not like superstitious practices. Even though he lived in a society that believed in it, that worshipped statues, he did not do that. He didn't like superstitions, but he took an active part in constructive and useful things. Otherwise, he would have taken a route to his self-adopted seclusion. He kept himself far away from drinking wine. So even people did that at the time. Eating meat slaughtered on stone altars. This is what's called al-ansab in the Quran. Basically, there were places near the Kaaba where people sacrificed animals for the benefit of the statues. This is al-ansab. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu innamal khamru wal maisiru wal ansab. This is what ansab is. These are stone altars where they go and slaughter. Just like the American Indians, they have totems. Like they have those totems that people now they take pictures with. Those are actually things of worship where people used to actually slaughter animals or human beings for whatever god they used to worship. So he ﷺ stayed away from these things. He also stayed away from the festivals that were adulterous, festivals that had to do with statue worshiping. So this is why Muslims really should not partake in Christmas, in Easter, and all these things, especially the youth. We see some Muslims, they say that it's okay, they're just children, there's no harm in it. There's grave harm. You're actually impacting their aqidah greatly, because you are teaching them to partake in an evil act of worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a Muslim is not allowed to do that. Now, Allah's guidance and care no doubt detached the Prophet ﷺ from all repulsive or evil practices. Even when he tried to obey his instinct, he ﷺ tried to obey his instinct once, to enjoy some of life pleasures. One day, he ﷺ, he narrated ﷺ, he said one day, I have never tried to do anything the people of ignorance did, except for 2 times. And every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervened and checked me, stopped me from doing so, and I never did that again. So he's telling what happened. He said, once I told my fellow shepherd to take care of my sheep when we were in the upper part of Mecca. So they were herding the sheep, and he wanted to go down to Mecca and entertain myself as the young men did. There's some musical festival, or like in this case, there was a wedding. So he went down to the first house in Mecca when I heard music. I entered and asked, what is this? Someone answered, it's a wedding party. So he ﷺ said, I sat down and listened to the music. He started listening to the music, but soon he went into a deep sleep. He slept. He was only awakened by the heat of the sun. I went back to my fellow shepherd and told him what happened to me, and I never tried it again. So he ﷺ once tried to listen to music. He never did it again. And look at this. When was this? Before him being a prophet. So the people that say music is halal, you tell them this. He said, even before prophethood, Allah stopped him from listening to music. Is this enough proof? Is it not enough proof? He's saying, Allah stopped me. Okay, so let's not go halal, haram, this scholar said, that scholar said. It's clear, music is haram. Okay, let's not fuss about it. Al-Bukhari also reported on the authority of Jabir bin Abdullah radiallahu anhu that he said, that he ﷺ said, so first instance is he tried to listen to music, Allah stopped him from doing that. Second thing that he did, while the people were rebuilding the Kaaba, the Prophet ﷺ went with his uncle Al-Abbas radiallahu anh to carry some stones. And you know, the stones, they were huge. You know, not small stones, they were huge stones. So Al-Abbas radiallahu anh told the Prophet ﷺ, who was his nephew, he told him, put your loincloth in izar, you know, because back then they had two clothes, one cloth, just like the ihram. You see, or you know, the Somali brothers, how they dress and stuff. You have the loincloth in the bottom, and then you have one on the shoulder. He only had the loincloth because people were not rich at the time. If you had one cloth, that means you're doing well. So he ﷺ had the loincloth around him, so Al-Abbas told him, take it off and put it on your shoulder, so that when you put the stone on your shoulder, it's not gonna hurt you. So he ﷺ said, as I did that, he ﷺ fell to the ground, and his eyes turned skyward. Later on, he woke up, so he fainted, and shouted, my loincloth, my loincloth. He wrapped himself in his loincloth, and in another report, his awrah was never seen afterwards. So it was a normal practice for the people of Jahiliyyah. As we said, people even made tawaf naked. So it was normal for them to be naked, right? But he ﷺ, Allah did not allow him to do that, even before prophethood. So even though, you know, he just wanted to protect himself, but Allah caused him to faint, and he never did that again. So the Prophet was distinguished among his people because he was modest, he had virtuous behavior, he had graceful manners. He was called al-Amin, the trustworthy. So when people wanted to keep something with him, some trust with someone, they give it to the Prophet ﷺ. To the point that even when he was in Mecca and he was preaching to them, they were abusing him and they were torturing the Muslims, and they still kept their goods with him. And when he ﷺ wanted to emigrate from Mecca to Medina, he gave the job to Ali radiallahu anh to give back the trust to his people. And this is different from what the Jews did when they left Egypt. You know the story of the Jews with the... No, you don't know. Okay. The Jews, basically, the women, Jews, they used to borrow jewelry from the Egyptian Coptic women, right? Because the Jews were slaves in Egypt, and these were the masters, and they were rich. So when Musa ﷺ told them to leave Egypt, they took that jewelry with them. They stole it. For us, they stole it. For them, in their aqidah, they didn't steal it, because in their aqidah, they have the right to take the possessions of any Gentile. Anyone who's not a Jew, they can take your possessions normal. It's not like Islam. So this is in their falsified books. You know, if you're a non-Jew, you know, they have something you like, they just take it. That's why the state of Israel today, they don't have a constitution, and it's written that the border of Israel is wherever the last soldier stands. They have no borders. Don't think Palestine is the only target. Everything around it is a target, but you know, they go in steps because they want to build the greater Israel, which goes between the Nile River all the way to Euphrates River. So even the Sinai Desert, northern Saudi Arabia, like we see today, you know, if you hear of the Sira of Neom that is being built in Saudi Arabia, that's just a smoke screen for giving that portion of Saudi Arabia to the Jews. It's actually full of the Jews today. Those Hasidic Jews, it's actually, northern Saudi Arabia is full of them. And many architects, they said that city that bin Salman said he's going to build, he said it's impossible to build. 140 meters wide, a city, 140 meters wide, I don't know how many kilometers long. So it's just a farce, it's an excuse for the Jews to come and there. Why did they want to come there? I'm sorry, again, I go from the point, but this is information we need to know. In the creed of the Jews, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam, not in the Sinai mountain, as is the case, in Saudi Arabia where they are today. What's called Neom is actually the biblical city called Mamlakat Na'um. So for them, that's a holy place. Northern Saudi Arabia, that's desert for us. Where they are today, they believe that that's where Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the miracle to Musa alayhi salam, where 12 stones, each one of them gushed water for a tribe. Right? It's in the Quran, right? 12 ayna. Right? So they believe in Northern Saudi Arabia, that's where all that happens. So for them, it's sacred. So basically, the women Jews, they took the jewelry from the Egyptians and they took it with them. And that's when Musa alayhi salam went to meet with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He told them, I'm going to come back after a month. He told the Jews, I will come back after a month. And he fasted during this month when Musa alayhi salam went to Jabal al-Tur, Mount Sinai in the Sinai Desert in today's Egypt. Towards the end of the 30 days, he stopped fasting. Musa alayhi salam stopped fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him, why did you stop fasting? He said, oh Allah, I'm afraid that if I keep fasting all this month, I go back to the Jews, the smell of my mouth is going to be bad and they're going to insult me because they mock their prophets as لا تكونوا كالذين آذوا موسى. It's in the Quran, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, no, you're not supposed to break the fast. You're going to stay 10 more days. وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ. The original plan was 30 days only. And Allah added another 10 days. So when the Jews saw that Musa did not come back after a month, that's when they started panicking. As-Samiri, actually Harun alayhi salam, told them it's probably a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because you have stolen the jewelry from the Egyptians. So he dug a big trench and he told them throw this jewelry in the trench, and then he covered it. At night, As-Samiri came, he took that jewelry, he melted it, he made a calf from this jewelry, a golden calf. And he told them, هذا إلهكم وإله موسى فنسي. Musa alayhi salam went looking for his Lord, but this is his Lord. But do you know why a calf? Like, did you ever think like, why would they just worship a calf? Like if somebody comes to you and tells you this calf, this statue is a god worshiper, you're gonna say no, right? But do you know why they worshipped it readily? Because they were impacted by living with the Egyptians. They used to worship a god named Osiris in the form of a bull. This is what happens to a Muslim when he lives with the kuffar. He gets impacted by them. The same way the Muslims today are impacted by Christmas and cross and everything. So the Jews, they were impacted by the fact that the Egyptians, their masters, don't forget, we're human beings. If you live in slavery long enough, you're going to submit. You're going to submit. They lived with them long enough to the point that they even doubted that they may be correctly guided, that they are the ones that are doing the right thing, that this is truly the real God, even though they themselves are supposed to worship Allah alone, right? This is why they readily worshipped the calf. Anyway, so back to the story here. We were talking about trustworthy. The Prophet ﷺ was trustworthy, and in Islam you're not allowed to take anybody's possessions even if he's not a Muslim. You know, many people, if a non-Muslim gives them some money or some trust, it's like, oh, it's a ghanima. No, ghanima, you gotta pick up a sword, you gotta fight for it. It's not a ghanima, it's theft, right? So he ﷺ had good behavior. We have 3 minutes left, inshallah. He was the most obliging to his compatriots. He was the most honest in his talk and the mildest in his temper. He was not easy to get angry. He was the most gentle-hearted. He was chaste and he was hospitable. He always impressed people by his piety-inspiring expressions. He was the most truthful and the best to keep a covenant. If he gives you a word, he does it. His fellow citizens, by common consent, gave him the title of Al-Amin, the trustworthy. The mother of the believers, Khadija radiallahu anha, once told him, as we will see later when Jibreel alayhi salam came to him, the first time the Prophet salam went to Khadija radiallahu anha scared. Because at the time they believed in jinn. So the first time he sees Jibreel, he doesn't know. Did he become a madman? He was afraid for himself. But Khadija radiallahu anha told him, you maintain uterine relations, salat al-rahim, that means your family members, you help the poor and the needy, and you entertain the guests, and you stand with those who are oppressed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never gonna cause bad things to happen to you. So he alayhi salam, this is who he was. And basically, the life of the Prophet alayhi salam is divided into 2 periods after Allah honored him with the prophethood and the message. Each one of this period was distinguished from the other. Number 1 was the Meccan period, and number 2 was the Medina period. The Meccan period also was divided into 2 portions. The Meccan period lasted roughly 13 years, and the Medina period lasted 10 years. So each period is made up of different levels, each of these levels being specifically distinct from the other. This becomes apparent after a brief investigation into the phases that the invitation to the message passed through. So we said, in Mecca, there were 3 phases in Mecca. The phase of secret invitation to the message. So he was calling to Islam secretly, alayhi salam. And number 2, the phase of public invitation to the people of Mecca, spanning from the beginning of the 4th year of prophethood until he migrated to Medina in the 13th year of da'wah. and the phase of invitation outside of Mecca, which happened from the end of the 10th year of prophethood through the Medina period until the end of Prophet's life. So when you hear someone tell you, we are in the Meccan period. In the Meccan period, there was no jihad legislated, there was no salat legislated. Actually, salat was legislated in the Isra and Mi'raj towards the end of the Meccan period, and it was only 2 rak'ah for the salat that we pray 4 rak'ah today. At the beginning, it was only 2 rak'ah, and after that, it became 4 rak'ah. And as we said, jihad is not legislated. So you hear some so-called scholars that try to convince the Muslims to not fight back the occupiers by telling them we're in the Meccan period. The Meccan period is gone forever. Why? Because the Meccan period, the Prophet ﷺ and the companions were not allowed to fight back. Were not allowed to fight back. That's never the case for Muslims. If the Muslim land is invaded, it's called jihad al-daf'. You defend yourself by all means. And when that happens, if a disbeliever invades Muslim country, at that point, we put the differences apart. We don't say this is Salafi, this is Mubtadi', this is that. As long as he's a Muslim, you fight alongside him. Even with the Shia. Even with the Christians. As Salih al-Luhaydal, may Allah have mercy on him, said. If, for example, Egypt, la qaddar Allah, is invaded by, let's say, the US attacks Egypt. There are Egyptians who are Christians there. So the scholar said we are allowed to join forces with the Christians in Egypt to fight this enemy that attacked this Muslim land. So we leave it here today, inshallah. If you have any questions, you can go.